a balance between both active and passive parks. As others have said, this Newtown Park is overloaded. We don't have enough capacity for the town of our size. We have, for organized play across 3 sports, expanded our Parks Without Borders concept, where we share facilities with Alpharetta. Alpharetta folks can come here for organized teams, and we can go to Alpharetta. We're tracking data closely to make sure it maintains a balance, and assuming it maintains a balance going forward, it gives great opportunities for our kids to seek out the kind of teams that they want to play with. But as we acquire new parks, we need to ensure that we got passive parks so people can just enjoy the park itself. But we clearly need additional ball fields for the youth of Johns Creek as we continue to grow and attract more families here. Thank you.
Parks and Rec are definitely a huge need and a desire for the citizens of Johns Creek. And I think in looking at that plan that's been pushed out by the Parks and Rec Department, I think we need to digest it and figure out what really are the priorities and then balance the priorities against spending of money. Because we have to figure out how that costs. And there's a lot of things coming at the city. So I think looking at Parks and Rec, one of the main things that I've noticed is that the Shake Rag Park needs to have some priority focus on it because it doesn't look like the other parks. And that puts it at the far end of the city, whereas here we have OC in Newtown. And then looking at the needs between passive and active parks and looking at spending. I think those are all critical items and we need to prioritize. So, thank you.
So my background being clinical healthcare and preventive healthcare, and the World Health Organization defines health as not just merely an absence of a disease, but a social, mental, physical, and an environmental health being. So you can imagine I do support park space and green space, and with many residents that I've talked to, they do support it. And there are a number of ways that we can fund parks: conservation easement, public-private partnership. I've established public-private partnerships where people do want, private organizations do have the money to fund public parks, and you can introduce many programs, initiatives to keep our community healthy. Newtown Park, I've spent many hours at Newtown Park, because if you use the Newtown Park tunnel, you'd see the Four Seasons mural painting, which was our project as a team for the Leadership Johns Creek that I graduated 2 years ago. So yes, parks are very needed, but also we need to look at exploring the boundaries to see what are the other opportunities for funding available. Thank you.
As a Cub Scout den leader, of course my answer is going to be that I want more parks. I bring my boys here, I take my boys over to Autry Mill, and that's pretty much about it. But that's not the real question. The real question, and I'm sure you have it somewhere coming, is about, how do we pay for this? Because they cost money. They're not free. They don't come free. So we need to get our priorities also together, because we need to really define what we want. Do we want, lower taxes? Do we want to roll back on the military? Or do we want to pay for a park? And I'm sure that bonds are going to come up in your questions also. But guess, you know what, they also cost money. So it's a matter of just redefining our priorities and taking it again to the public, and maybe in a form of a non-binding referendum. People need to know, and people need to make a decision. Thanks.
Well, before I answer this question, I just want to make it public that even though that my profession is in construction, but I have made it public a number of times that if I get elected to the City Council, I will recuse myself from all construction projects, both private or public, within our city limit. And so for parks and rec, I think one of the things that will be able to minimize the impact on our existing parks, and there's no question that we need more pocket parks, which I'm very glad to hear that our current city councils have allocated $20 million towards that purpose. And one of the important things that we can do is to bring connectivities of sidewalks between public places, between parks, between the neighborhoods. So many park visitors, instead of driving to the parks, now they might choose to walk to the parks. And I think it'll help to reduce and minimize the impact of the parks.
As Steve mentioned earlier, there's $20 million directive action towards park acquisition. I think we should move towards the riverfront park that we've discussed for a matter of years. But I also think we need to look at the data, how much we use. In the Parks and Rec, we want to expand the dog park for $500,000. That dog park over there is huge and beautiful. It doesn't need to be expanded. The rate of use for pocket parks is basically slim to none. No one really uses pocket parks. So we need to look at the data on the usage, see if it's a good cost-benefit analysis for the citizens. So, and also, as Carlos said, we could put a non-binding referendum, but I think a detailed plan would be needed, and then allow the voters to see if they would support that. Thank you.
Having played baseball from the time I was 4 to 24, I've spent a fair amount of time at a ballpark. And so clearly I would support any idea of creating better facilities for our kids to play ball in. Echo Mr. Lynn's statements in regards to pocket parks and creating connectivity, because that creates community. Having places where people can gather, people can meet their neighbors without driving to them, because I do use pocket parks actually. My wife and I are around to run to those. So I think that is a great thing that our current council has supplied money to move forward in the future, because again, that helps us to sustain or withstand, I guess, from overbuilding. And so that creates the green space, because once you give up green space, it's really difficult. It's really costly to ever get it back. And so you've got to protect it and hang on to it while you can. I've seen other cities make errors in that way of not hanging on to it and overbuilding.
The Sacred Park is too small, it should be expanded. The OC Park and the Newtown Park, these two parks, through King Louis Road or Vice Road or through James Road, they are more in Alberta than they are in Johnson. We need more parks in Johnson. One way to develop parks will be to have a city center somewhere, and there are several proposals. And city center can have also a big park in addition to businesses, restaurants and other things. And if we restrict cars and encourage pedestrian traffic in the city center, we can have a park there. In addition, we can have pocket parks, which so many people have told. And along Johns Creek or close to Chattahoochee River, there are beautiful places that can be developed. City has to buy land. Sometimes the land will be private. City either has to persuade people or use eminent domain and try to acquire more places to have more parks.
Parks is actually a very good reason to fill this seat for 7 weeks. The Recreation and Parks 10-year strategy is in front of council now. I think probably everybody here by now has read the draft plan. I was on the original team for the first Parks and Recreation strategy several years ago. It's very interesting to see how it's evolved. This is a good plan. There are many holes in it, simply because you can't do everything at once, but there are community pieces that are missing from it. There are public-private partnerships that are simply not there. There are public-public partnerships. There's nothing in there about the fact that our high school clusters serve more youth in our city for sports than our entire program together. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need to figure out how do we partner with them. They have fields, they serve our youth. They might need field space. It's one example. Another is the Y. I've been on three city committees that serve them. Most of them having to do with how overstressed that Y is, and they like to come in here. Lots of different reasons.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Next question, and this is going to tie together really two questions, but they both are about the same topic, which is the district. So first of all, what is your opinion on the district? You support it. And then how many homeowners that you've interacted with have expressed that they would support taxpayer funds in order to develop the district? So what is your position on the district and how would you fund it?
Another reason you need to fill for 7 weeks is the economic development strategy for the next 6 years is in front of council. My position on the district is that it was far overdone and it's private property. A very hard look at finances will tell you, yes, we need to develop professional businesses here. We need to be responsible for what the future of the city is going to be. When you don't do that, you overburden the homeowners. However, you don't do it in one hit, in one fell swoop, and you certainly don't do it without a traffic plan when the biggest issue in front of everybody is traffic. In addition, I think a lot more input from the citizens. I know they tried to get input, but prior to, before you're out there spending all that money. Finally, if you really look at the tax burden, homeowners are paying about 30%, not 80%. We are talking property tax. If you look at the overall income that the city receives, it's about 2.5 percentage points higher than Alpharetta. Alpharetta has massive commercial. Doesn't seem to be a magic bullet. Something has to be done with Tech Park, but I don't think that's the only answer. And it's not ours. It's not ours to do something with. Good advice and guidance.
District and city center is necessary to have. That will give a better recognition to the city. City doesn't have a zip code. City uses zip codes from Suwannee, from Alpharetta, from Duluth. If you put Johns Creek in the GPS, sometimes you cannot reach anywhere. You have to put Duluth. If you live in my area, if you live in this area, you have to put Alpharetta. In some areas like this area, you have to put Suwannee. So Johns Creek needs to be more noticed and more famous by having a district and a city center. And city center can attract businesses, can have a park, can have foot traffic. And businesses will probably generate taxes so that the homeowners will have to pay less taxes. And we need a district, and we need a place which we can say is the center of the city where there could be a lot of foot traffic, dining, recreation, park. And it can be at the Tech Park, or I have heard several times in Plan B. It can be anywhere. People have to sit down and decide and get it done. Thank you.
I am a supporter of the district concept with the caveat that if it's done correctly. So we have to pay very careful attention to the density issue that exists, and we can't overgrow that area. But I will agree with some of the other comments that these guys have made, that it does give us an identity. It is an attraction point for other businesses. When other large corporations look to come to Johns Creek, there's kind of a checklist of things that they look for. And they look for places that their people can walk to go eat during lunch. They look for activities where they can entertain in the evenings. And so it does help us in that attraction point to attract those businesses that kind of like I described earlier. But part of the question was, how many homeowners have we spoken to that support the city paying for it? I would suggest probably none. I think this is a private development, but we have to create the design. If we create the design for it, the city then has some latitude as to what businesses we attract versus ones that we can say, no, you don't fit into the box that we've created.
I've done a lot of door-to-door canvassing, and no one really is on board with the district, especially when they find out that we've already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. And you know, the government shouldn't subsidize any type of development or even help private property owners. I think it would be disadvantageous to other businesses in Johns Creek who have been busting their tails in some of those strip malls, and then you subsidize a large new investment. I think the assumptions that it will bring in businesses is flawed. If the private sector, if it would be economically sustainable, developers would have already built it. So we'll have to provide tax abatements or something like that to incentivize those businesses to come in. And I just don't think that's right. I think we need to support the current businesses by reforming the gross revenue tax into a net income tax. And then I think that will attract new businesses, and it will let the private sector develop rather than letting the government develop our needs. So.
Well, I think actually on this issue, we actually agree. I agree with Todd and Chris more than we disagree. It's a good thing. Well, over 1,000 residents that I spoke with over the last 3 months. One major concern is the traffic that is going to bring if we have a district here. So instead of just rolling out, we're not going to have district, I think we have to prioritize what's important to our citizens. If we are going to be the servant of the citizens in Johns Creek, we ought to prioritize their desire. And I believe that addressing the traffic issue will be far more important than putting the district ahead of addressing the traffic issue.
I love the idea of a town center. I mean, look at Alpharetta, look at the Avalon, it's gorgeous, right? I mean, who doesn't like it? I would like to have one here. Unfortunately, we don't. I think two words only define that, and it's just less government. Why is government pushing for the development of, the district? Why don't we let the private sector come in and develop? To echo Chris, if it was sustainable, it would have already been done. We need to actually support our local businesses first, and then we need to study what kind of impact is that going to have in traffic, in utilities, in services, in many other areas to see if we can actually sustain the vision that is being created right now. Thanks.
So as I listened to many residents when I started knocking their doors, one of the concern was the district, and they said, are we really going to have that? And recently